Hi there, it's Richard Little from Your Land Partner, joining you once again. We're on video 80 of 100, so we're almost 80% way through this series, which gives you a bit of an idea of how development actually works. So we are in the build phase, exciting bit. We're in the pre-construction, so we're still not on site, but we're actually doing the paperwork to get us on site. And today I want to talk to you about two really important aspects, which is building control and warranties. Two different things, but there's a certain amount of overlap, etc., and there's a bit of misunderstanding possibly with some people as well. So generally you need both, depending on what you're actually doing, but let's make the assumption you do, because if you're not sure, then you will need both. Let's start with building control. So there's effectively two routes that you can get your building control services from, and that is local authority building control or private companies. Now there's lots of, well, I've heard lots of negative comments about local authority, and I've heard lots of positive comments about private companies, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Some local authorities are superb, some private companies are awful. So don't just say I'm going to go down the private company route. To a degree, a little bit more flexible, I would say, on balance and probably our preference, but it really doesn't necessarily follow that you have to go that route. And you know, if you're looking at the costs, costs vary a little bit, but the building control service is very competitive, certainly when you're on multi-unit projects. So if you just sort of say what building control is how you're going to build something. So your planning consent at a very basic level, so apologies for those that understand this, is what you're going to build, what can you build, you know, and the building control is how you're going to build it, you know, and it has to conform to a regulation, and a regulation is a minimum standard. So it's not necessarily the best, it's just a minimum standard. So building control will normally get involved reasonably early on, you know, in terms of perhaps even some of the design stuff, some of the detailed design. So if you've got an existing relationship with a supplier, even local authority or private, you know, it's quite appropriate to have a few words with them if you're not too sure about things, and it's always worth just checking, getting their view on it. They like it as well. Ask their opinion. Everybody loves to have their opinion asked of. So that they'll get involved. So certainly as you start doing the detailed design, there are a few things if you're not too sure about, perhaps if, you know, the actual detail, the technical aspect, you might throw a bit of it at your building control service, your building control supplier, if you like. As I say, so what they will generally do is, once you've actually got something ready for a submission, you'll get what you would call a plan check, and what is sometimes called a plan check. So you submit your paperwork to say, does this pass building regulations? And what they'll do is they may well give you an approval to say yes, it does. Now, different providers operate in slightly different ways in terms of you know, providing you that sort of, yes, you've got building control sort of consent, as it were, permission, you know. But obviously what you've got to do, you've got to satisfy certain things. So within building control, they're looking at things like the structure. You know, is this thing going to hold up? How's it going to hold up? You know, they're looking at things like, you know, environmental issues in terms of insulation. They're looking at sound. They're looking at drainage. Every aspect of it, they're looking in some form or other. What they're not looking at generally is the quality. So that how good's your plasterer? You know, how good's your joiner? How big are the gaps around the doors? They're not really looking at that. They can tiptoe into it if it's really shocking, but that's not really what they're there for. They're there to actually oversee, because initially they'll start on the plan check, but then they will approve it by inspection. So you will have to call your building control officers in at certain points, particularly say, you know, before you start, obviously, and then once you've actually perhaps digging some foundations, they'll want to come in and look at the foundations before any concrete is poured, or depending on the type of foundation it is. If it's got a lot of steel in it, they'll probably want to come and see the steel in place before the concrete's put over the top. They'll want to come and sort of see when the roof's on and the floor joists and things like that. Are they in the right places? You know, have you used the right timbers and stuff like that? You know, so they're making inspections as you go through, and obviously on a multi-units development, that you know you're going to get them. They're going to be quite frequent, and it is also possible. Probably shouldn't say this on a video, that they won't always come, because you get this arrangement with them that they trust you to a degree, so they don't always come. I mean, they'll always say they do, but in the reality is they don't always. But you've got to have a good relationship with them before you do that. And so the other thing that we always do is, in that case, is we always have a photographic evidence ourselves anyway. So you know, so building control is, you know, you've got to get this nailed in pre-construction. You've got to get it organised. You've got to give them time to look at your plans and to comment on them. They might want them changed. They might want you to prove some more evidence. What building control generally is drawings. It doesn't have to be that way. It can be purely on the planning drawings and a schedule of works, a specification. You know, we prefer to have a reasonably comprehensive set of drawings that show most of the stuff, so that the people on site are actually knowing what they're actually building. So that's our preference. So, you know, with those drawings, it is just for building control. That is not all the detail you'll necessarily need in order to build your project. You know, there is stuff over and above that. So if you commission building regulation drawings, that is not necessarily every detail you will need. So as an example, on a building regulation drawing, it could say floor joists laid to 400 centres or 600 centres, without actually saying how big the floor joists are. And actually, in principle, that gets approval, that gets permission. But actually, you've then got to, at some point, prove to them that they are the right size. You know, so then there's all sorts of examples you can do like that. So building control drawings are not all the details that you need. So that's just one thing to think about, and we see a lot of confusion on that. People think, I've got the building reg drawings, that's great. They want to put that as part of the tender documents, which yes they are. However, it's not sufficient for most contractors, and some subcontractors price up because the detail isn't always there, particularly on a structural basis, like what we've said: foundations, joists, roof, that sort of stuff. You know, lintels, also openings and steels and bits like that. You know, they need more than the building control drawings. So I think things like drainage plans as well. You can actually get building regulation approval on, you know, on line drawings. Actually, that's not what's going to happen. So a lot of things like drainage, you know, they actually get approved by inspection. As I said, most of the stuff does before. So in terms of cost, you know, so for new units, you know, the craziest number we've actually know of, and this is less than £100 per unit, which is a ridiculous price. Then there's no way that provider is actually going to be able to provide you the service that you need. You know, and it just isn't, and it has got stupidly competitive. You know, so generally, you know, anywhere between £200-250 a unit, you know, on new build anyway. It's sort of where you'll hit. You know, you might pay a little bit more possibly, but you shouldn't need to. I think that's probably it on building control. It's necessary. You have to do it. Yeah. As I say, you can go local authority or you can go private company. There are certain types of works that private companies can't do. The one example of that is if the project is under any sort of enforcement notice, from a planning perspective, not from building control, they can't do it. It has to be then done by local authority. So that can come more in conversions and things like that. We've had some experience of that in fairly recently. And again, it's okay, you know, nothing wrong. So don't go down the route of must have private. To say, there's some shocking private providers, and there's some great local authority providers as well. And they do get they do get a lot of bad press because the building inspectors coming round and they're saying you can't generally do something. They're either happy or they're not, and if they're not happy, then you know, yeah, are they always right? No, they're not always right, because some of this stuff is opinion. It's not all based on the science. It is opinion. But you know, as I say, you need to have a bit of respect for them, even if you don't agree with them. Sometimes it's the politic to actually agree with them and get on with it. Equally, or on the not equally, but on the other side of that, if they're really wrong, take them to task. Yeah, and most of them pretty decent if you do it in a considerate way. Challenge them. Yeah, get them to prove it. We've had that on foundation depths when it's close to trees and different things like that. You know, there's pretty much standard manuals that tell you how far away you should be and how deep it should be. But then there's a little bit of manoeuvrability, negotiation, shall we say. And foundations, if in doubt, they'll make you dig deeper. Well, actually, every time you dig deeper, it costs you a lot of money. It costs you money to go down, and then it costs you money to build it back up again. Anyway, I think that's building control. So we'll go on to the murky world of warranties. So warranties, you do need a warranty for most new properties. So new build and newly established properties, so conversions. So if you're newly created properties, you will generally need a warranty. Principally, the warranty is there for, it's an insurance basically. It's there for mortgage provision or finance provision. So you won't necessarily need it if you're doing affordable housing, etc. But that does also depend on who you're doing it for. There are other things which act as a warranty. Something like, you know, there's a professional, an architect certificate, for instance, is a similar thing. The key with warranty providers is you need to check them out on the Council for Mortgage Lenders. So the CML is a website. CML, I'm not sure what it is, but just Google it and you'll find it. And they also, because there's a plethora of different warranty providers now, and some are good, some are bad. You know, we've had over the last sort of couple of years, there's been a few problems with one or two providers sort of being taken over and various things. So costs and services have increased and decreased in that order. Yeah. So make sure that they are accepted by most of the lenders. So it's pretty clear on there. As you can say, go on a website, just search it and things. So number of providers, main providers. So what are they looking to do? In a way, this is where the confusion comes in. It's not so dissimilar to building control. So they are looking and inspecting and making sure work's done up to scratch. They will also, some of them will come in at key points, particularly at foundation stage. Other than that, they generally come in and around to just drop in often, you know, just to sort of have a little bit of a look and see what's going on. But it's not the same thing. Do some of the same providers do both? Yes, they do. And obviously it sort of makes sense if you go that route, if you're getting your building control service and your warranty from effectively the same group, so that the surveyor that comes on site can be doing both. Sometimes a bit of an issue about what hat they got on, but obviously it makes financial sense. But it doesn't always work that way. You know, we've got two projects on at the moment, and no, they're different providers. Although the on one project the building control surveyor is also acting as a consultant surveyor to the warranty provider. So that's something else to look at. So from a warranty perspective, now it depends who is taking out the warranty. So the warranty will generally either be the developer or the contractor, the main contractor. Yeah, and so and warranty costs vary on very different things. So it depends. Again, it's an insurance, so they will base it on, you know, a number of different factors. So for instance, conversions generally cost more per unit than new build. Yeah. Another thing that comes into it is the experience of the person delivering. So if you are a new developer, then you are going to get, you know, you're going to be paying a higher premium. Yeah, and it can be significantly higher. So that's generally newer developers will normally go down the route of having probably a main contractor who will be using their warranty provision and their warranty cover. So there is a cost, and this cost varies massively. We don't see much now less than £1,000 a unit, very occasionally, but not much, up to many thousands of pounds a unit, depending on what it is. So they are going to most warranty providers who take a decision on, well, how much is this unit costing? You know, if it's costing a massive amount of money, we are providing insurance. So there will be an element of the fee based on the cost of the build, or their estimated cost of the build. I think most people, certainly my age anyway, and maybe most of other people will have heard of the NHBC, which effectively were, when we were at our peak, I suppose, in the 80s and 90s, were pretty much the only provider. They provided well in excess of 90% of all warranties. I don't know what their percentage is now, but it's an awful lot less than that. They become, very, very expensive, and they still are expensive, but they offer comprehensive service. So they certainly do building control and warranty provision. They do all sorts of things. So they offer bond cover, which anybody's listened to the video about bonds that you might need for roads and sewers and all that. They do all of that sort of thing. You need to bear in mind is if you're relatively new, and not just the first development, but your first few developments, they may ask you to put a security bond up, which is generally cash, and it will sit there possibly for 2 years, until such point of they take over the responsibility for any defects, after that period. So it is about defects, warranty. It's insurance against defects to the build. So as I say, number of providers, NHBC, they're largely the most expensive. You can go direct to some. You can go through brokers to find the best price. So you will make an application or an inquiry to say, this is what we're doing 10 units, 20 units, whatever, this is what they are, this is how big they are, this is the estimated cost, etc., and they'll come back with a premium, with a fee, and that's pretty much it. So from a paperwork perspective, it's all about the paperwork. You will need that warranty, or if you go the architect certificate route, there's plenty of mortgage companies that accept those. You will need that piece of paper in order to either refinance it if you're keeping it, or actually for somebody to come in and buy it. They will be looking for that warranty, and without that warranty, the paperwork at the end, then unfortunately the sale or the mortgage will not be released. So it really, really is crucial. Don't underestimate the costs of these things. To say building control relatively cheap in my view, warranties significantly higher, and it's not because they don't come on a site as often as a building control, but it's not that. It's an ongoing insurance. It's for generally up to 10 years, and that's required, as say, by most mortgage lenders. So I think in conclusion with warranties, you are normally going to need them. So there's certain types of projects in certain areas that you might not, but let's just go on the basis that you need them. So cost them in, and cost them in, realistically at realistic levels. Make sure that you allow enough time for applications to go in. So again, in the pre-construction phase, we haven't talked about timing. Pre-construction can last from just a few weeks to many months. And that's not always based on the size of the project. It's how much work you need to be doing, how many surveys, reports, how many detailed drawings have still got to be done post-planning, as it were. So make sure you allow enough time. And where you can, you want to establish a professional working relationship with the providers, whoever they are, and they will get to know you, and whether they like you or trust you is another matter. Yes, you get some real jobs worth in some of these roles, but equally, if you treat them well, be considerate, be professional, even if they're not overly, in your opinion, you'll make life a lot easier for yourself. So but if you don't agree with anything, push back. It's not a major problem. Richard Little again, video 80A, just concluding build, pre-construction, talking about warranties and building control, and as happened a few times, is I'm the master of technology, or not the master of technology, so got cut off in my prime. We was just reaching the conclusion of the subjects. Just really don't want to go over it too much more, but don't underestimate the time it takes to get the building control sorted, or warranties sorted either. Get them on board as early as possible, because they will be helpful in the detailed design. Warranty providers as well. And one thing I probably didn't mention in the previous thing is they also have sometimes, in NHBC particularly, have their own standards handbooks. So they actually don't always follow building control. So building control standards are set out in some of what we call approved documents. And they are, as I've said before, they're minimum standards. If you look at a handbook from NHBC, then some of those standards are somewhat different. So most of the warranty providers go on approved documents, i.e. building control quality standards, but NHBC not so. They've got their own standards, and they do differ a little bit. So you've got to make sure that the specification, the detailed design that you're coming up with is going to comply. And if there is any doubt, then certainly both your building control supplier and your warranty supplier, as I say, we never really have any problem talking to them. You can't bother them every 5 minutes, but about issues that you're not sure about how they'll see it. You know, you might be very certain about how you want to do it, or your engineer might be, or whatever it might be about. But actually, it's always good to actually get it rubber stamped, you know, by the people that are going to rubber stamp it. They're actually going to provide you with certification at some point. You don't want issues. You don't want to be even submitting details of something to building control or to warranty providers to say this is what we're going to build, and they're going to come back and say we don't like that. And I will say there are more issues on conversions with that. You know, things like, you know, should there be a new roof, shouldn't there be a new roof, and warranty providers have quite a few stories around about where the structural engineer says there's nothing wrong with the roof, but the warranty provider says we want a new roof, and it's generally down to how old the roof is. It's nothing to do with whether it's structurally sound or not, and it sounds crazy, doesn't it? But you know, we've got somebody that we know quite well. You know, is not them, but a friend of theirs. You know, cost them. I think it was a few £100,000 on a big conversion project where they tried to fight the fact that they didn't need a new roof, and structurally they were correct. But the warranty provider, who is an insurance company, if you like, yeah, they just said no. You know, we want a new roof because that roof predates whatever it might be, whatever the date was. So that's knowing and dialoguing, communicating with your provider to make sure what you are going to do. All of your consultants might say, yeah, that's fine, but they're not signing it off. So always, anything you're not sure about, run it past these, you know, the building control and warranty providers, just to see if they're happy with it, you know. So yeah, so anyway, right, that's extended it even a bit longer on video 80A, if you like. So I'm going to sign off now. It's given you a bit of an insight into warranties and building control. As with all of the subjects that we're doing videos on, it goes a lot deeper, and we could make, you know, 2, 3, 4 hour videos on most subjects, but you ain't going to want to listen to all of that probably. So we're just giving you the highlights and a few of the lowlights as well. So it's been Richard Little from your land partner, and I'm going to be joining you again probably very soon. So take care.